As strange as it might sound to some of you, I'm actually a big fan of David Slade, although only one of his films show his potential creativity and innovation, and that was the film he did with Ellen Page and Patrick Wilson, Hard Candy, but I won't be reviewing that film today. I'll be reviewing the second film in his portfolio, 30 Days of Night. The film opens up on Ben Foster, playing the character of the Stranger, walking through the Alaskan wilderness and coming upon the town where the whole film takes place. And that takes me to the visuals of the film. As he did with Hard Candy, David Slade is masterful when it comes to creating superb and even amazingly stark images to convey the dark and brooding mood. With such a deserted feel and isolated images, we cannot help but feel as disconnected as the characters in the story. And after becoming a fan of the original graphic novel's visual design, I should say that the film is pretty close, or as relatively close as a film can get. As the film continues, the pacing is much more of a suspense film rather than a horror film. But hey, it works. Increased volume of ambience instead of harsh music also adds to the discomfort that begins to build in your mind as it gets darker and darker. Then it gets to the part where the older man is sitting in what looks to be a satellite station. Immediately, your gut tightens. You get really frustrated when the guy decides that it's best to go outside and investigate. Anyone who follows basic formulas in horror movies can get that this guy is going to die first, and David Slade does not disappoint. And just to show the disjointed and relatable behavior that's happening here, it cuts back to Ben Foster, who is one of the more convincing actors in the film simply due to the part of his fucking unnerving voice. Then it gets interrupted by Josh Hartnett. The guy was a favorite for me in Sin City and Lucky Number 11, but this role doesn't sell me at all. But as a matter of fact, he's kind of annoying. But his bland acting and even the scene is saved by Melissa George, who does a pretty competent job throughout the film as Stella. Well, as a fan of dialogue-based films, I can say that the film was still holding my attention at this point, but many critics had problems with it, saying that the pacing was too slow for a horror vampire film. Hey, it's called a build-up. Intersplice a little blood spill to soothe the gore fans, and we're back to the suspense film. At this point, I was kind of pining for some blood to spill myself, and I could have done without the drama between the family members, but this fucking freaky speech from Foster made all our spines ripple. After a bit more discovery and shockers, we are thrown into a chaos of a full-blown vampire feeding frenzy. And who better to lead up this messy, mutilated mayhem than Danny Huston, who is unfucking believable as his role as Marlowe. As a matter of fact, from the comic rendition to the film, I couldn't see anyone else playing that part. After a visually and audibly attractive rampage, we find the gang of surviving people sealing themselves in an attic. The rest of the movie plays out with many people dying and turning into vampires to a showdown between Marlowe and Hartnett's character, Aben. When they survive the darkness and the sun begins to rise, this is the one part in the movie where I believe the pacing really messed up the impact of the film. The death of Hartnett was very well acted, surprisingly, and very well scored. However, Slade holds the ending for too long and it loses its impact. This can be the reason why so many people left the theater at the end a little disappointed, because the ending didn't wrap up the film as succinctly as it should have. In review, I can say that 30 Days of Night is a very well-constructed piece, with some truly scary elements thrown into the mix to enhance the mood. The cinematography was great, brooding, and creepy. The music and audio was edgy and very nerve-wracking, just as a horror film should deliver. However, the script written by the comic's original creators was something that I didn't marvel at. I did think originally, before going to see the film, that the original creators making the word choices would bring the film as close in feeling to the comic as possible, but I was wrong. The screenplay, at many crucial areas, fumbled on itself and did not hold a candle to the original story, cutting out several plot elements that were partially responsible for holding the attention of the readers of the graphic novel. Another reason for lost points was the acting. For much of the cast, it was either too mellow or too dramatic. I mean, vampires fucking exist. Show a little bit more emotion than a brief "oh my god" or disregarding the fact entirely. Hartnett seems to be completely void of interchangeable emotions, rarely even changing his own expression. But what kept my attention were three main actors, Ben Foster, Danny Huston, and Mark Boone, who played Bo. Ben was scary, and when they returned to find him, he actually seemed depressed and despondent. Houston just kicked ass all around. The creepy language and the blacked out eyes were simply amazing. His acting, though basically static throughout the entire film, was just fucked up and haunting enough to hold his role in my memory. And last, Boone played that outsider with an adequate knowledge and no fear in basically any real rationality that sacrifices himself so the others can get away. His death scene was actually a tad tragic. I think that the movie gets less credit than it deserves, but I do wholeheartedly agree that it's not a magnificent film. Scenes were phoned in by cast members, and the ending sequence happened in such a manner that I was unaware if they just wanted to fill space or convey some sort of empty message that apparently never got through to me. I'm certain that David Slade was much more on his game with Hard Candy, but I think that this project's going to be a little bit better than the next one he decided to do. So regardless of your next film, Mr. Slade, I give your adaptation of the impressive graphic novel a rating of passable.